Who are the Greek gods of the planets? Many of the planets, as with many of the months, take their name from Roman gods and leaders. July, for example, is a shortening of Julius, as in Julius Caesar. Similarly, August is named in honor of Augustus Caesar, also known as Octavian, who became emperor of ancient Rome, after the assassination of Julius Caesar in 44 BCE. We've also been landed with the Roman names for the majority of the planets in our solar system too. The Greeks are really the ones who deserve the credit for creating these gods, and their planetary associations. The Romans more or less copied the Greek gods into their own mythology but changed the names. They didn't even change all the names. Apollo, for example, is the same name in both Greek and Roman mythology. Their personalities and their dominions, be it the winds, the seas, war, healing, poetry and so on, were also practically copied and pasted over. It's fairly easy to recognize the Roman gods who were associated with each planet, because most use the same name for both the planet and the god, but do you know who the OGs, original gods, from ancient Greece are? 1. Sun. Sunset Asila City. Initially, the Greek god of the sun was Helios, but, later, Apollo became the sun god. Apollo is the son of Zeus and Leto. It's no surprise he was connected with the sun, he was the golden boy of the gods, literally and metaphorically. He was seen as the ideal form of an athletic young man. He was also viewed as the protector of children who could help them with their health and education. If you wanted your child to grow big and strong, Apollo was the god you would pray to. He was attributed with the invention of archery, and his sister Artemis, and he is usually depicted with a golden bow and silver arrows. 2. Mercury. Hermes was the Greek god associated with the planet Mercury. One of the best ways to understand Hermes is to look at the story of his birth. He was walking and talking, fluently, within minutes of his birth. He traveled hundreds of miles on the first day of his life, herding cattle, which belonged to Apollo, oh dear, back to the cave where his mother, Maia, was waiting for him, completely dumbfounded. Hermes was physically and mentally quick. When Apollo confronted him about stealing and butchering his cattle, Hermes produced a lyre, a stringed instrument, which he had made from the guts of the cattle. He sat beside Apollo, still on his first day of birth, teaching him about chords and harmonies. After explaining his need for the cattle, and offering Apollo the lyre, all was forgiven. He soon claimed the final of the 12 seats on Mount Olympus. 3. Venus. Aphrodite was the god of Venus. She is also associated with beauty, love, passion, pleasure, and procreation. Her birth was not the beautiful event you might imagine. After Uranus, we'll get to him later, was castrated by his son Cronus, Cronus flung his private parts into the sea, classic Greek stuff, and from the foam arose Aphrodite. Her birth really wasn't out of the ordinary in being so extraordinary. She is actually a godly generation above that of Zeus. She is his aunt, in fact, but took Zeus' side in the great war between the Olympian gods and the Titans, and earned herself a top spot in Olympus, and a planet which we call by her Roman counterpart too. 4. Earth. Full disk Earth, Apollo 17, 1972. Gaia, one of the oldest of the Greek gods, is the god of the earth. Gaia is one of the grandmother of Zeus and both the mother and the lover of the sky, Uranus. She didn't have many options in this early cosmic formation. From their union, all subsequent gods, titans, cyclopes and giants came. Their relationship didn't end well as she fashioned a gray flint sickle which her son Cronus would use to castrate Uranus, from which Aphrodite, above, was born. Gaia has survived not only through Roman mythology, where she was called Terra, but was also adopted in other religions such as Neopaganism. You will even see her referenced in lots of modern spiritual movements. 5. The Moon. Artemis, the twin sister of Apollo, was the goddess of the moon. As everything about Apollo was golden, everything about Artemis was silver. As Apollo was the sun, Artemis was the moon. She, like her brother, was credited with the invention of archery, and she became goddess of hunting, the wilderness, wild animals, and chastity. The last of these, chastity, was one of a long list of demands she made of Zeus. She had Zeus wrapped around her little finger. She wanted everything to be fair between herself and her brother, and for no man to ever touch her. Those who tried regretted it. Only one man, her hunting partner Orion, ever won her heart, but he was killed by either Gaia or Artemis herself by accident. 6. Mars. Solar eclipse July 27th. Ares is the Greek god of the planet Mars. He was the god of war. More specifically, the violent and brutal aspect of war. His sister, Athena, on the other hand, was the god of skill and tactics of war. Ares was all about mindless fighting, and mindless is the crucial word. He was not an intelligent god. It's no surprise that Mars, the red planet, became associated with the blind anger of the warring god Ares. All the gods were capable of anger and great wrong. They reflected the best and worst traits of humanity, a far cry from the Christian God of the New Testament. 7. Jupiter. Zeus, king of the gods, was attributed to the planet Jupiter. He was the child of Cronus and Rhea. As Cronus had deposed his father, Uranus, Zeus' destiny was to overthrow Cronus and his Titans. Today, a Titan has positive connotations, but it was originally used as a pejorative term for the sons of Uranus. After many years of battling, the Titans were finally defeated. Zeus punished all who had opposed him. Some he eventually forgave, but he gave Cronus the humiliating punishment of swinging a scythe of time, mercilessly cutting through the ages. From this, he gained the name Father Time, and many of our words to do with time are associated with Cronus: chronological, chronometer, synchronous, and many more. Zeus divided up responsibility over the world, primarily between the 12 gods of Mount Olympus. Zeus himself, while he was ultimately in charge of everything, was the god of the sky and thunder. His wife was Hera, but he had a wandering eye and bore children through other goddesses. 8. Saturn. Cronus. Cronus was associated with the planet Saturn. We also see the god celebrated in one of our days of the week, Saturday, the day of Saturn. Why would the Greeks bestow such an honor onto Cronus, the defeated enemy of Zeus? The answer is they didn't. When the Romans adopted Cronus into their religion as Saturn, they took a much more favorable view of him. As he was responsible for time, he could influence the beginnings and the ends of the seasons. This was therefore a god to take seriously. Cronus was again rebranded as the Angel of Death and the Grim Reaper in the Judeo-Christian version of events. Things didn't end quite so badly for Cronus then. He got a planet, a day of the week, reverence from the Romans, and an important place in Judaism and Christianity. 9. Uranus. The Greek god Uranus, or Uranus, was the god of the planet Uranus. He was god of the sky and the wife of Gaia. Uranus was one of the original gods, born shortly after the likes of Cosmos. He could be a merciless and cruel god, and he paid his karmic debt when his son Cronus castrated him with a scythe. He was then carried down to the depths of the earth, where he is supposed to have buried all his powers. He vowed that if anyone was to access his great source of powers, then his revenge would unfold. But Cronus wasn't worried. Who was ever going to be able to mine as far down as to retrieve the powers of Uranus? Or, to give it its modern name, uranium. 10. Neptune. An aerial shot of the Temple of Poseidon in Cape Saunion, Greece. Shot with the Mavic 2 zoom, the Temple of Poseidon in Cape Saunion, Greece. Poseidon, the god of the seas, was the god of Neptune. Poseidon was a brother of Zeus, and it was a toss-up between him and Hades as to who would be god of the seas and who would be god of the underworld. Neither Poseidon nor Hades really cared which their realm would be. They were fiercely competitive and they just wanted to be god of whichever one the other one wanted. When Zeus revealed that Poseidon was to be the god of the sea and Hades the god of the underworld, both celebrated in order to make the other think they had got the one they wanted. Along with the sea, Poseidon was also given powers over storms, earthquakes and horses. Horses were seen as part of the element of water. He is usually depicted holding a three-pronged fishing trident which he can use to stir up storms or hit the ground with to create earthquakes. Poseidon is a mixed character, like most of the gods, and the sea itself. He is usually mercilessly cruel to his enemies and devoutly loyal to his friends. It's best to stay on the right side of Poseidon. 11. Pluto. Hades, the god of the underworld, was also the god of Pluto. When you read about Hades, you can see that up until the point of him inheriting the underworld, he showed a fair amount of character. Something in him seemed to change from the day Zeus allocated his brother, Poseidon, to be god of the sea and for him to be god of the underworld. Perhaps he just became the role he inhabited over time. Of course, as god of the underworld, he wouldn't have much to do without mortals finding their way to him. It seems prudent that he should be awarded a planet in his name. Hades was, in fact, the eldest son of Cronus and Rhea. Zeus was the youngest but in return for freeing them all from the belly of Cronus and Rhea. Zeus was the youngest but in return for freeing them all from the belly of Cronus, who had eaten them all to ensure Uranus' curse that he will be deposed by his children didn't come true, and defeating Cronus and his titans, the right of primogeniture was overlooked. Perhaps Hades drew the short straw, ending up with deathly duties of god of the underworld, but at least he had secured his place in the solar system and being worshipped by the Greeks and, later, by the Romans under the name of Pluto. Every god loves to be worshipped. Colorful galaxy. When you're next looking up at the stars, perhaps trying to find some of the ones on your personalized star map, don't forget to look for the planets too. Yes, the Romans may have chosen their names but it was the Greeks who first conceived of them. The characters and symbols of these planetary gods have filtered down through cultures and civilizations to become a part of the lives we lead today. Many of the words we use derive from these Greek gods and even our perception of the planets have been largely characterized by Greek mythology. In astrology, Mars is still seen as the planet of action, energy, and is the ruler of our animal instincts. Don't forget the numerous constellations, which you can see on your star map, which have their roots in Greek mythology. Sagittarius, for example, is a centaur who was killed by Hercules. Hercules is also supposed to have bitten the goddess Hera when he was breastfeeding and the milk which spilt out became the Milky Way. Science might explain it differently nowadays but the power of these myths go on. In astrology, planets have a meaning different from the astronomical understanding of what a planet is. Before the age of telescopes, the night sky was thought to consist of two similar components, fixed stars, which remained motionless in relation to each other, and moving objects/wandering stars, ancient Greek, sigma tau rho epsilon pi lambda alpha nu tau alpha iota, Romanized, Astor's plane tide, which moved relative to the fixed stars over the course of the years. To the ancient Greeks who learned from the Babylonians, the earliest astronomers/astrologers, this group consisted of the 5 planets visible to the naked eye and excluded Earth, plus the Sun and Moon. Although the Greek term planet applied mostly to the 5 wandering stars, the ancients included the Sun and Moon as the sacred 7 luminaires/7 heavens, sometimes referred to as lights, 1, making a total of 7 planets. The ancient Babylonians, Greeks, Persians, Romans, medieval Christians, and others thought of the 7 classical planets as gods and named their 7 days of the week after them. Astrologers retain this definition of the 7 classical planets today. To ancient astrologers, the planets represented the will of the deities and their direct influence upon human affairs. To modern astrologers, the planets can represent basic drives or urges in the subconscious, 2, or energy flow regulators representing dimensions of experience, 3, they express themselves with different qualities in the 12 signs of the zodiac and in the 12 houses. The planets are also related to each other in the form of aspects. Modern astrologers differ on the source of the correlations between planetary positions and configurations, on the one hand, and characteristics and destinies of the natives, on the other. Hone writes that the planets exert it directly through gravitation or another, unknown influence, for others hold that the planets have no direct influence on themselves, but are mirrors of basic organizing principles in the universe. In other words, the basic patterns of the universe repeat themselves everywhere, in a fractal-like fashion, and as above, so below. 5. Therefore, the patterns that the planets make in the sky reflect the ebb and flow of basic human impulses. The planets are also associated, especially in the Chinese tradition, with the basic forces of nature. Listed below are the specific meanings and domains associated with the astrological planets since ancient times, with the main focus on the Western astrological tradition. The planets in Hindu astrology are known as the Navagraha, literally 9 planets, with the addition of 2 shadow bodies Rahu and Ketu. In Chinese astrology, the planets are associated with the life forces of yin and yang and the 5 elements, which play an important role in the Chinese form of geomancy known as feng shui. Astrologers differ on the signs associated with each planet's exaltation. Worship of heavenly bodies. The worship of heavenly bodies is the veneration of stars, individually or together as the night sky, the planets or other astronomical objects as deities, or the association of deities with heavenly bodies. In anthropological literature, these systems of practice may be referred to as astral cults. The most notable instances of this are sun gods and moon gods in polytheistic systems worldwide. Also notable are the associations of the planets with deities in Sumerian religion, and hence in Babylonian and Greco-Roman religion, viz. Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Gods, goddesses, and demons may also be considered personifications of astronomical phenomena such as lunar eclipses, planetary alignments, and apparent interactions of planetary bodies with stars. The Sabians of Haran, a poorly understood pagan religion that existed in Haran during the early Islamic period, 7th to 10th century, were known for their astral cult. The related term Astrolatry usually implies polytheism. Some Abrahamic religions prohibit astrology as idolatrous. Pole star worship was also banned by imperial decree in Heian period Japan. For the Lord is great, and greatly to be praised, he is to be feared above all gods. For all the gods of the nations are idols, but the Lord made the heavens, Psalm 96 verses 4-5. Thou shalt have no other gods before me, Exodus 20 verse 3. For the worshipping of idols not to be named is the beginning, the cause, and the end, of all evil. Wisdom of Solomon 14:27. Ye are my witnesses, saith the Lord, and my servant whom I have chosen, that ye may know and believe me, and understand that I am he. Before me there was no God formed, neither shall there be after me. I, even I, am the Lord, and beside me there is no Savior. Isaiah 43 verses 10-11. The real name of God in Kikongo is Tata Nzambi, or Nzambi, and Jesus' real name is Yesaya Congo, not Jesus, because there was no J letter in existence back then. Also, in Kiswahili they call Jesus Yesu, or Isu. His people will be called by his name, Daniel 9 verse 19, 2 Chronicles 7 verse 14, following the commandments are the only way to heaven and destruction of our enemies. Psalm 83. He is Nzambi of Israel, Israelites, only and none else. Amos 3 verses 1-2, Luke 1 verses 68-75, Joel 2 verse 27, Isaiah 48 verse 17, and Isaiah 45 verses 5-17, etc. For the Lord is great, and greatly to be praised, he is to be feared above all gods. For all the gods of the nations are idols, but the Lord made the heavens. Psalm 96 verses 4-5. For in the division of the nations of the whole earth he set a ruler over every people, but Israel is the Lord's portion. Ecclesiasticus 17:17. Mikhail Massa video. Subscribe for more.